So, what I'm about to say may be called unfair by some people, but I think it is an important point, and so I'm going to say it anyways. And that is that in the Catholic Church, I have noticed, and I'm talking about the Roman Catholic Church, I want to start to be more careful and conscious to say that. In the Roman Catholic Church, there is a large chasm between the laity and the clergy / theologians and scholars in terms of knowledge and understanding of what the church teaches. And I think this is a really big problem because when I talk to Catholic theologians and scholars and priests, I am usually moved at the depth of knowledge that they have. I'm usually moved at the depth of Roman Catholic theology. There's a lot in there that I agree with and a lot in there that I just find to be ancient and beautiful and wonderful and things that I have just assimilated into my own faith and recognized within my own tradition, Anglicanism. And so there's a lot that I love about Catholicism. But when I talk with lay Catholics who attend Mass on Sundays and go to confession, I've found that there tends to be a pretty large gap between the laity and the clergy in terms of fundamental baseline knowledge of the faith. What I find is that the laity do tend towards a more works-based understanding of salvation. I've talked with many laity that talk about, I'm trying to be a good person, and I just hope that it measures up on the last day, and my good outweighs what I've done that is bad. I've heard others say, that as a good Christian, you just gotta go to church. You gotta try to do your best to make Mass attendance every day if you can, and go to confession as often as you can, and hopefully that'll be enough. And they talk in ways that makes me think that they don't understand the theology. They talk about how Christ is physically in the Eucharist. They talk about how, and many of them deny that Christ is present in the Eucharist at all. Now, Roman Catholics watching this might say, well, Jonah, that's not fair. Like I said at the beginning, you might say that's not fair. You might say it's not fair because what those people say is from their own state of ignorance. It doesn't have any reflection on what the church actually teaches. Nor does it reflect on, it could just be that this person has a poor understanding and it's an anomaly. The problem is that it doesn't seem to be an anomaly. I do see it tend to be pretty prevalent. Another thing that's very prevalent is superstition. You do find quite a bit more superstition in a lot of the laity that misunderstands some Catholic teaching. I've seen some things that look pretty darn close to worship of Mary rather than simply the intercessory role that the church has historically given to her. And so again, people might push back and say it's not fair. The ignorance of some does not discredit the institution. That's not what I'm trying to do here, though. I'm not trying to discredit the institution of Roman Catholicism. I believe they are a valid church. I believe that they have valid sacraments, valid clergy, and I believe that they are part of the Catholic Church. However, I do think that this bolsters part of the Protestant Reformation. And one of the things that the Protestant Reformation really emphasized was that the laity and the clergy should both be given the scriptures. The laity and the clergy should both have an understanding of the Mass. The laity and the clergy both have a right to the title of priest of God. The priesthood of all believers. This was a big part of the Protestant Reformation. And that's not to undermine the specific role of clergy as bishop, priest, and deacon, but it is to say that there is a priesthood of all believers that's shared. And Roman Catholicism doesn't deny this. But because they have such an elevated view of the priesthood in Roman Catholicism, and a view that in some senses I think maybe unintentionally undermines the role of laity in the church, there is an understanding, and again, I think this is very, very problematic in the medieval period specifically. I think they've done a better job as time has gone on. But in the medieval period, it's a night and day difference between the way that the clergy are treated and the way that the laity are treated. The laity are practically peasants They come in, they get to look at the Mass. They don't get to receive the Eucharist, maybe once a year, if most, and only in one kind. The Mass is in Latin. It's not in the vernacular of the people anywhere. And so people don't understand, and so they're dinging bells at the time that the Eucharist is consecrated so people can actually know what's going on. In what sense is liturgy actually present when liturgy means the work of the people? If there's no work of the people, there's no liturgy. If the priest is up there doing his thing, but the people are totally unaware and cannot participate, there is no liturgy. And this is blatantly and demonstrably historically foreign to the church. The early church writings make it clear that this is a participation of a congregation together. And so, like I said, there's been reforms. The Roman Catholic Church has done a really good job with many of its reforms. But the reason I'm bringing this up is I think that we need to grant to the Protestants that they did a good job and a better job at providing the laity a role in the church that actually was a role of value, of ministry, of theology. And so when you talk to an average Protestant laity with the average Catholic laity, you will find 9 times out of 10 that it is the Protestant, not the Roman Catholic, that has a accurate and good understanding and handling of Scripture, of tradition. And I'm not talking about evangelical Protestantism. I'm talking about classical Protestants. If you talk to classical Protestants who are laity in their churches, they will know far more about the Scriptures than a Roman Catholic layperson. And I think what this demonstrates, in the very least, is that Rome needs to rethink the way in which they catechize. Because this is still, the catechesis, the RCIA, is still producing weak Roman Catholics that do not understand the theology of the church, and because that, at times lean into a compromise of the gospel, lean out of the grace gospel that Rome possesses into a gospel that is more akin to Pelagianism. And so this is a win for the Protestants. The Protestants did a great job here. And I think Rome, they long need to, instead of just starting to adopt elements of Protestantism, they need to give credit to Protestants and say, hey, you did a good thing. They need to stop saying that they are the true church, the undefectable church, because the Protestants did something that was more reflective of Catholic theology than Roman Catholicism. And if you have a movement that you call schismatics and heretics that recovers the Catholic faith in many areas, then you have a little bit of a problem. And so again, this isn't to knock Rome and say like, these guys are just all messed up, but it is to point out that I think one of the biggest problems facing Rome today is the huge gap and divide between the laity and the clergy. The knowledge gap, the sacramental understanding gap, all of these things are a major problem. And what I love about Protestantism so much, that is one of the reasons that keeps me Protestant, is when I'm talking to laity within the church, I'm able to engage with them in an intellectual way, have conversations about theology, and they are able to understand the Scriptures. They know the Scriptures, they know the theology of the church, they know church history, and it's a really beautiful thing to witness. And whenever I go to Mass at a Catholic parish, first of all, people are going in and out. There's no real community afterwards. There's not a lot of that I've seen. But in addition to that, these people just don't understand the theology. It's something that they're doing to fulfill their obligation to the church, and nothing more than that. I'm not saying they're not exceptions. There are definitely exceptions. There's always exceptions. But it would seem that the rule in Catholicism is mostly nominalism. Some might disagree. Some might think I'm being too harsh, but that's what I've experienced. That's what I've seen. And I do think that it's a problem, and I hope that it can be addressed. And I hope that Roman Catholicism will move closer in the direction of Protestantism in this area. And in doing so, maybe they'll admit that we are a valid church after all. Anyways, that's all I got for you. Just some thoughts. I hope you either take it or leave it. Write an angry comment in below if you're angry with me. Write a nice comment if you think that, yay, Jonah's defending Protestantism. Whatever you want to do. But one other thing that you can do is become a local supporter. Click the link below and join for free. But if you want to see more of these videos, Subscribe for $5 a month. Again, $5. It's not a whole lot of money to part with each month, and it will allow me to keep making these videos. And I hope that you guys enjoy these videos, and if you want to see more, I need that support. So please do that, and I'll talk to you guys next week.